Has it ever occurred to you, Master Nine Fingers, that a sword is different from other weapons? Axes and maces and so forth are lethal enough, but they hang on the belt like dumb brutes. But a sword has a voice. Sheathed, it has little to say, to be sure, but you need only put your hand on the hilt and it begins to whisper in your enemy's ear. A gentle word, a word of caution. Do you hear it? Now compare it to a sword half drawn. It speaks louder, does it not? It hisses a dire threat. It makes a deadly promise. Do you hear it? Now, compare it to a sword full drawn. It shouts now, does it not? It screams defiance. It bellows a challenge. Do you hear it? Today we are talking about Book 1 of the First Law trilogy titled The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. If you missed my video on why you should read this series, you can find that on the channel and I'll link it at the end of this video. Let me just say up front that unlike the Let's Discuss video, the reviews of these books will all be spoiler heavy. I will be going through the plot, I'll be going through everything that these characters do. So if you haven't read it yet and you plan to, and you should, I strongly urge you to bookmark this video and come back to it once you have read it. So, spoiler warning over. Let's get going on The Blade itself. This is the first of a trilogy of books focusing mostly on the Union, which is a federated realm in the kingdom of Midderland. And it's more about the growing tensions between the threat of the barbarians to the north and the Gurkish Empire to the south. Stories kind of told through a point of view of about 6 main characters. Kind of run through them here as easily as I can. Logan Nine Fingers, he's a famous Northman. He's got kind of a crazy past, somewhat of a split personality. Giselle Dan Luther, promising young nobleman of the Union officer. Sandan Glokta, an inquisitor for the Union with a very tortured history. Play on words there. Pharaoh Maljin, she's an escaped slave, obviously, trusts no one. Colin West, he's a major in the Union Army. And the Dogman, the most ridiculous name, but it'll make sense. He was once part of a Logan Nine Fingers' old crew that are still kind of learning to roll without him here. The very first chapter will kind of get through that. Unlike most fantasy tales out there, this one has no clear-cut good or bad guys. It's not black and white. It's very, very, very gray. Abercrombie does a good job of making you have rooting interests, even if you don't necessarily agree with very much that these characters are doing, the decisions that they're making. But I mean, that's what made this book kind of stand out for me, is it was different. It wasn't the farm boy, Campbellian hero's journey. It's very, very, very different. And I mean, I'm having a hard time even saying if there is a main character in this story. It's more like 3 main characters, 3 secondary characters, and a whole ton of tertiary characters. So kind of just going through it here. The first chapter, told from Logan's point of view, it isn't anything fresh or new. But the first chapter with Inquisitor Glokta, now that had me wondering if we were getting a point of view chapter from the villain of the story. So immediately I'm already like, oh, okay, wow. I mean, that quickly changes, and I don't think I'm alone in saying that Glokta is my favorite character by the end of this book. I believe among the Abercrombie First Law fandom, he's a lot of people's favorite, him and Logan. But yeah, definitely mine. And what we know of these characters through one book, I think that Glokta has the most sympathetic backstory. He's, a former prisoner of war, was tortured for 2 years. Now his body is just like ruined. He's in pain 24/7. And I mean, the twist of that is now that he has become what he hated, and he's become the torturer for the Inquisition, and he's quite good at it. That's made clear right up front. He's quite good at this job. Then you have Giselle and West, who seem like your usual military men, but by the end of their first chapters, you see that isn't exactly the case. I'll get more to each individual character and what I liked or disliked in a bit. But first, let's go through some of the story. There's a ton of lore established in this, not unlike Wheel of Time level or nothing like that. But there's a good chunk of lore established in the first book. Definitely with enough hooks to make you interested in what comes next and some of these characters' backstories. Like, for example, Logan, he's able to communicate with these spirits. And that's teased but never fully explained. He also has like this berserker rage Wolverine split personality thing that we get a peek at in the final act of this, which was just wonderfully written and just so violent. I don't really know what exactly the Gandalf character of this book, Baez. I really don't know what he wants with him. Gonna find out, and I know that's probably not the best comparison to make here, the Gandalf character, because he's not much like Gandalf. Just anytime you have a wizard character that's kind of leading a pack in any book, you're going to get your Lord of the Rings comparisons. But that's about the only one you're going to get here. Baez, that's probably the most intriguing character in the story for me so far. Most of the book is spent with trying to prove if he's really this first of the Magi or if he's like an imposter, because I mean he's a historical figure from like hundreds of years ago, and like, okay, why is this guy still here? But I mean, as a reader, you pretty much know from the moment he first busts out magic, they call it art in this story, that you know that he is this first of the Magi. But you know, Galacta's tasked with finding out if he really is this historical figure, and he held a lot of stroke in the Golden Age of Middle End. So it's kind of, I don't want to say kind of like part detective. It's really not. Guys, it's just hard to explain. Really, he just, Galacta always assumes that everyone's lying. I mean, that's his job. Everyone's lying, and I've got to get the truth out of them. So that's kind of his task with the Baez part. With Jazal, you get what you think is going to be your usual, blonde hair, blue eye, pretty boy that turns out to be the hero of fantasy tale, but he is a total douchebag at the beginning. And while he's a total douchebag at the beginning and most of the second half of this book, he gets kind of a mini character arc in this one, but he's still just a pompous ass this whole book. When we meet Pharaoh, she's in the south and meets Yul Wei, who is also one of these, I don't forget what number, but he's one of these Magi. There's 12 of them, by the way, or there was 12. So he knows Baez, and he wants to take Pharaoh to the Union to meet Baez. So obviously they're still tight. This is easier said than done, though, because Pharaoh, that's a firecracker right there. But they set off that she's there, but she has kind of like these I don't want to say superhuman abilities, but she has like some kind of power. She's like able to heal real quickly. She's able to fight off these superhuman creatures that are called Eaters from Gurkle. Want to know more about those for sure. West is kind of this Column West. He's just kind of at least in this story, he's kind of a transitional character for setting up whatever they're trying to do with Jazal. Everything, it seems like he spins is just, okay, this is what I'm helping Jazal get to. This is where I'm setting up Jazal's love interest. This is where I'm setting up how he needs to learn how to fence better. But I think book 2 is where, if I recall correctly, West is going to take more of a prominent role. And same goes for Dogman. The rest of the name men, the guys from Logan's old crew, they have a pretty small role this go around. There really are eyes for what's happening up north with Bethid and his plans to make war against the Union. In all, this story, it doesn't spend a lot of time traveling, across the lands like most other fantasy series do. It spends the majority of its time in Adua. I hope I'm saying that right. Adua, it's the capital of the Union. And this one's all about setting up the characters, how they eventually all meet up, and the deep breath before the plunge of war coming to the Union from 2 different coasts, So it's really a setup novel, and thankfully Abercrombie's a good enough writer that a book dedicated to character introductions is actually a real page turner. Usually that's going to be like, okay, boring, going to check out, but no, I mean, you're really interested in each one of these characters, knowing what makes them tick, knowing what's happened to them beforehand to make them like they are, and how are they all connected? How are these 6 different point of view characters in different locations and backgrounds? How are they going to meet up? And when they do, it's really rewarding. And I mean, I feel like it happens seamlessly. It never feels forced. One of my complaints about Wheel of Time is, okay, they're together, they all split up, and then the final act rolls around, they're all back together again. This feels like, okay, this could actually happen, and it's just wonderful writing. So by the time this fellowship's together, they go on their first trip, mostly together, into what is called the House of the Maker. It's been sealed up for ages. And you're pretty much on board for whatever quest they're going on to next. And we've established that, yes, Baez is the real deal, and we have the characters split up and head in different directions as the book ends. Now, that would surprise me. I thought we spent this whole book getting them together. Now we're splitting them up again. But, you're ready to see where they're headed in book 2. Galacta is sent to Dagaska in the south, just to find out what the hell's going on with the Gurkish. If they're trying to start war again, they're trying to retake this land of, it's like the tip of the south, the continent in the south, the peninsula, that the Union is the protectorate of. So he's going down there to see what's going on with that. And then the interesting little tidbit there is that the Gurkish are the ones that captured him all those years ago and tortured the shit out of him. So he's obviously very, very interested in repelling whatever they're doing. Wes goes north. He's going to help fight in the war against Bethad, and we're likely going to meet up with the Dogman and crew, since they have no love for Bethad, because they just went to his stronghold to try to warn him about these Shanka, which are kind of like orcs with super sharp teeth, but they're becoming a problem. Think of White Walkers from above the wall. They're kind of going to tell him about this, and he ends up killing one of the other named men, and that just like they're like, fuck this guy, we're coming for you now. Then you have Pharaoh, Jezal, and Logan joining Baez's quest to what is called the Edge of the World in the Old Empire out the west, and they're going to try to find this object referred to as the Seed. So there, we got our MacGuffin here. I feel that most fantasy stories, they kind of have a closed-end quest at the end of the first book, because they're trying to see if they can make a series. This certainly feels like a chapter 1 of a 3-chapter story. Very clearly was written as a trilogy from go. I wasn't there when these were released, so I don't know if he had planned, okay, I'm going to release one this year, one that next year, like he's doing with the sequel trilogy that's coming up. But I assume he did. I assume he had a 3-book deal from the get-go, and that's why he was able to write the way that he did, and I think it works out very well. There's no real heroes or major battles in this book. I mean, there's a fight, but I wouldn't say like a major battle or anything like that. Tons of character development, but like I said, in a satisfying way. Let me talk about some of the characters individually and what I liked or maybe didn't like for each. Glokta, easily the most interesting backstory for me, and why you think he's a sympathetic character due to his time as a POW. He's so ruthless that it makes him not sympathetic. Still, all the characters, they all have inner monologuing in this book, and his is some of my favorite. My favorite quote from the book, I say all the time, "Body found floating in the docks." It'll make sense when you read it, trust me. But he's so nasty to everyone, since he was at one time he was a war hero, and now he's treated kind of like a leper or a throwaway because he's mostly crippled. And so you understand his grumpiness of someone. He's just in constant pain, and people are always just ugly to him, and he even occasionally shits himself. So, I mean, it's hard to think that you'd be a very happy-go-lucky guy, especially in his line of work. But I will say that one scene that I really, really liked that made him not be one note was him reconciling with Wes at the end. I thought that was a nice touch, and it's good to see him have at least one friend through all of this. Jezal, I mean, you just want to punch this guy in the face for the first half of the book, and most of the second half. He's constantly like looking in the mirror, thinking about how pretty he is, admiring his own jaw and stuff, and even once talks about how he hates ugly people, sees no use for them, and poor people. He describes how he talks about how he wants to take this one kid, one of the other soldiers. He's real poor. It's probably all the money he has, and he wants to take all of his money from him in the card game, even though he has no use for money because he comes from a rich family. It's brutal stuff, and he blames everyone else. Because he isn't as badass of a swordsman as maybe he should be, or he has the potential to be. But then he meets Wes' sister, Artie, and that's when things start to change a little. He's still a pretentious little slug. But, he starts thinking like an actual human being at this point. And he's still worried about, okay, hey, she's a commoner, and I'm this, we could never get married or whatever. And at first it's like he just wants to sleep with her. Wes confronts him and almost beats the hell out of him. But by the end of the book, he's discovered, hey, I'm in love with this woman and I don't know what to do. So yeah, he changes a little bit of a mini arc there, but it's good. His stuff at the contest, that was easily my favorite part of the whole book. It was fantastic. Logan, we got to know what this dude is all about, because you think he's just going to be, the muscle of the group, and he does that well. I mean, he has the highest kill count in this book, but when he's on death's door, he kind of like snaps and he goes into this murder rage blackouts, and I think there's more to that than we think. And I'm sure we're going to learn more about that as we go along. But since Baez is the one who seeked him out, I'm interested to see what that's about and why Bethad apparently, he crossed Bethad for a final time. Bethad's going to let him live, but, tell him, get the hell out of the north. I don't want to see you down here again. You're dead. So lots of gaps to fill in there. Pharaoh might be the angriest first-person character I've ever read. And I imagine that years of slavery and torment likely does that to a person. I'm intrigued why she's seems to not take damage, but why Yulwei seeks her out. That's kind of my biggest question mark. What is she bringing to this group besides telling everybody "good for fucking you" a lot? You know, I want to know, why is she important? I don't think she's just there for her charming personality. So there's definitely something there. There's some scheming going on. But her and Logan seem to have a light bonding moment during the big action sequence. So something to keep an eye on going forward. Maybe that can lighten her up a little bit. West, his relationship with his sister is an odd one. He seems to not like her at all, but he gets mighty overprotective of her towards Giselle. But she full on breaks his mind at one point when he's telling her, you can't do this, you can't be seen with Giselle or whatever, and she breaks his mind and says, you don't care about my well-being, you only care about your reputation, and he just beats the hell out of her. And I mean, I was just stunned. I mean, it was quite unexpected because he seemed like the only honorable character in this story. But then we get the backstory about how their dad used to beat on her too, and he knew this, and he just kind of ignored it. And here he is making those same mistakes. Going to have to be one hell of a redemption arc for him to recover from that one, because man, that was pretty brutal. The Dog Man, I want to say he only has like 2 or 3 chapters in this book. Of all those guys, I think Forley the Weakest was the one I kind of liked the most, and he's the one that got. Of all the Dwarfmen, though, I think he seems to kind of be the one I'm the least interested in. And I mean, I may be just because he's just he's the narrative character, and you're hearing his thoughts, and you're just hearing what he thinks about these other ones. Like Black Dowl's just this real bastard, and Three Trees is in control. But I think both those guys just kind of seem like they're more interesting, and I'd like to know more about those two going forward. But the biggest question I have at this point is, what is this seed thing all about? Why is Logan, Giselle, and Pharaoh so important to Baez? What's in this little metal box thing that they took from the house of the Maker? Which that was really cool, by the way. They never went upstairs or ramps or anything, and they eventually come out to a landing, and they see we're a mile up in the sky, but we never went up any stairs or anything. So all kinds of nifty little things going on inside the house of the Maker. I guess we'll find out. The next book is titled Before They Are Hanged. I've already started that, and I'll have a video for that one sooner than this one. But thanks for watching, guys. You can check out my other book reviews and channels. I've done the first phase of my Wheel of Time books. I plan on doing some for the multiple Stephen King books that I read over the past year or so. Also, if you're into media besides books, please check out the podcast on the channel or on iTunes. It's a weekly show. We talk about everything relevant in pop culture media over the last week. It's a lot of fun. Like tonight, we're going to be doing our Game of Thrones recap, and we're going to be doing our Avengers Endgame review. So it's a lot of fun. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you after I finish book 2.